So let's take the phrase trans women are women. It is a fact that no human being has ever changed sex. That is an incontrovertible fact. So if your entire belief system is predicated on the belief that people can change sex, then you're in trouble because it won't survive the light of scrutiny. So what do? You say, we must not discuss with those who disagree, and anyone who disagrees is a fascist. And that's a remarkably effective technique because nobody wants to be called a fascist. And that's exactly what they did quite explicitly. I mean, in the UK, we have a body called Stonewall, obviously based on the Stonewall riots of 1969 in New York. That's where the name is taken from. But this was the foremost charity, gay rights charity in the UK, who pivoted in 2015 into trans rights. And they had an official policy called no debate. And their policy is we don't discuss. Either you agree with our ideas or you don't get a seat at the table. And that's how they've done this. And that's how trans ideology has spread so rapidly through the UK. Because anyone who said, hang on a minute, women should have their own single-sex spaces, men should not be in women's sports, men should not be in women's prisons, all of those people were branded as fascists or evil or bigoted or transphobe or TERF, which is, of course, the modern equivalent of witch. And once branded, those people, it got very difficult for us to reach the point we've got. I mean, we've had a breakthrough recently because of Hilary Cass's review into pediatric gender care, which has thrown a real grenade in the gender ideology movement.
And the reveal of Michael Schellenberger was with us just earlier today, in the WPATH files, which is just absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, same thing. You know, you've got the WPATH files, which their latest standards of care, version 8, includes a chapter on eunuch identity. It promotes the idea that if you want to remove your genitals, that is a form of gender identity that requires respect in a civilized society, and that medical practitioners ought to be encouraged to castrate their patients if they are innately eunuchs. And this is kind of insane. And
I don't want to laugh at that because there's nothing funny about it, but innately, I am a eunuch. It's 400 AD. I'm a eunuch.
Right, and this exactly. You're not working for a harem on behalf of the Sultan. You know, you're not a countertenor at the Vatican. But this is the. It's a real problem, that, because also WPATH is an activist group that masquerades as being the world's global experts on gender pediatric care, or gender medicine, as they call it. But yet here they are talking about eunuchs. Not only that, in the draft version of the Standards of Care version 8, there were links to a website, a fetish eunuch website, which included short stories about the castration of children for sexual pleasure. And that was uploaded to the NHS Scotland website in the UK. So you have an activist body which is promoting effectively written child pornography, sadomasochistic castration porn, linked directly to a WPATH official document, which is then uploaded by our National Health Service. This is why this is very, very disturbing. If you want to know more about that, you should look at a website called Redux, which is a feminist website that has done some investigation into this. It's a very, very dark area. It's very disturbing. But this is where we go when we allow activists to masquerade as experts. They're not experts. They're ideologues, and they've got no place in medicine.
This is what I guess Peter Boghossian and maybe others have called like idea smuggling. Sort of, you take this ridiculous stuff, but you put it through a accreditation body, which you actually happen to have created yourself, sort of. And so off you go, and criminal dollars come out squeaky clean and ready for use.
Peter's talked about this. He calls it idea laundering. And we've all seen it happen. If you have any familiarity with academe, with how these journals exist. So, for instance, Fat Studies is a great example, because Fat Studies, actually, most of the things came from America, and actually Fat Studies came from Britain. It was British academics who did this, which is odd because there's more of an obesity problem over here. But nevertheless, they wanted to promote the idea that being obese, being morbidly obese, that there was no connection between that and poor health, right? I mean, for God's sake, there's a connection between that and not being able to walk up the stairs. So we can all see that there's a problem.
The diabetes and heart disease trends are mere coincidences because of sunspots and climate change.
Well, they say that because the medical profession is so sort of imbued systemically with anti-fat prejudice, that's why this lie that diabetes and cancer is connected to obesity is promoted.
I think they are right in that medicine is against you being overweight.
Yeah, it is.
Because of health, because that's definitionally what it's trying to do. So I guess there's a certain logic underneath the surface.
Yeah, exactly. Titania used to talk about how fat shaming was evil, and there would be no bullying amongst kids if you just overfed your children and made them all fat, and that would be one way to combat it. This is something that, I mean, but this point about idea laundering, I think it's important because we all know that that's nonsense. But what you can do is you set up a journal called Fat Studies, you get some PhDs to write articles, and they all cite each other. So it gives this illusion of incontrovertibility, that this expert said it, this expert said, but they're just citing each other. Now, I noticed this a long time ago. When I was at university, I saw academics within the humanities, within English literature, doing precisely the same thing. One of the most fashionable things was to be a post-Foucauldian, to apply Foucault to literature and to sort of treat him as a kind of deity. I mean, they did. I went to conferences where there was a man called David Halperin who wrote a book called Saint Foucault Towards a Gay Hagiography. I mean, they're explicitly deifying this man, or at least canonizing in that case. But what I noticed is that all these academics, the same names would crop up again and again. David Halperin, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, whoever it might be, quoting each other, building up this straw man, this sort of wicker man of nonsense, and pretending that it was real. They all had this thing about how homosexuality didn't exist before the word was invented, and that's straight from Foucault's History of Sexuality. The idea.
When does that even?
Well, because for the postmodern mindset, our understanding of language our understanding of reality is entirely mediated through language and constructed by language. I mean, Foucault didn't say that language creates reality, but he said that our understanding of it was constructed that way, which is why, of course, today the woke activists want to control language. They think if they control the way you speak, they can control reality, reshape reality. 2 + 2 = 5, for instance. They say words are violence. They say,
and silence is violence,
so you can't win. So these academics were doing a similar thing. They were creating this question of, well, let's take that, the word homosexual, which is a Latin Greek compound which came into popularity in the medical discourses of the late 19th century, and before then you didn't really have a designation for people who were exclusively same-sex attracted, and this sort of had the effect of pathologizing it and saying this is a thing. But of course there were people who were exclusively attracted to their own sex in existence before that, centuries before that. Well, they've always been there. In fact, there's a poet who I studied called Richard Barnfield, a contemporary of Shakespeare, who was obviously gay, just wrote love sonnets to another man. It's very clear. Shakespeare wrote love sonnets to a man as well. He was probably bisexual if we take the sonnets as evidence of that. Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day is his most famous poem, but that's written from one man to another. That's a gay poem. So the idea that these individuals weren't same-sex attracted because they didn't have a word to describe it is like saying that alcoholism didn't exist until the word existed. It's like saying electricity didn't exist until we had a word for it. It doesn't make any sense. So
if you don't know the word table, this isn't even really here.
It's not here.
Just I don't know what it is. My hand can go right through it.
Exactly. So it's a nonsense. And one of the great minds who was challenging this back then in the 90s was Camille Paglia,
yes,
who wrote a very good essay on this called Junk Bonds and Corporate Raiders, which I think was meant to be a review of one of David Halperin's books, but it ended up effectively being a takedown of academia. It was basically saying, look at all these people quoting each other for their shoddy books. They know nothing. They don't read. They don't read the text they ought to read. They just theorize and read about Foucault. Some of them don't even read Foucault. They just read about him. So there was always a fraudulence built into the humanities, particularly when it comes to English literature. And I think that because that's my background, I'm quite alert to that fraudulence, and I know it when I see it. And I've seen a lot of it from the woke activists.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.